I thought I was out, but they pulled me back in. Jim Ostrowski, Liberty Moving Podcast, the best walking podcast in the world. I wasn't really going to do a podcast today, but I started to get besieged on Twitter by alleged Catholics urging me to vote for Kamala Harris. And yeah, I know why they're doing it. It's because the Catholic vote's going to decide the election. I get it. She's losing the Catholic vote, not overwhelmingly, but she's losing it. And it's big certainly in the Rust Belt swing states, not so much in the other states, but it used to be Catholics were about 25% of the population. With the advent of the popularity of atheism being the belief that the God is the government. Just kidding. Might be a little less than that. So I felt I had to address it. I normally don't talk about voting that much, or certainly tell people how to vote. I haven't endorsed anybody for president. I've already disendorsed Harris without any hesitation. I think she is horrible and will be horrible. And frankly, I don't know if the country will actually survive her presidency. But I'm not going to talk about that specifically. I'm going to talk about the argument that Catholics should vote for Harris. And I'm going to try to stick to that subject. So first of all, by way of introduction, as you could tell by my hat, if you know anything about Buffalo, that's St. Joe's High School. Yes, I am a Catholic. Had all the sacraments I'm eligible for. Went to Catholic Grammar School, St. Martin's 71, St. Joe's 75. Both kids went to Catholic school, grammar school, and high school, and Will went to John Carroll Catholic College. So I do go to Mass. I'm not a theologian. I'm not bragging about how great a Catholic I am, but I am a card-carrying member. Not quite Latin Mass Catholic, but certainly significantly above cafeteria Catholic. So let's talk about voting, because I'm going to talk about voting today. So let's talk a little bit about voting. But to me, voting is an extremely problematical form of decision-making, method of making decisions, And I've written about it extensively. If you want to hear my full critique of voting and the argument that it justifies everything the government does, that's totally absurd. And it's in my book, Exposing the Two Big Lies of the Gun Control Movement. You may wonder why there's 25 pages about democracy, voting, and so on in a book about gun control. Well, read the book and you'll understand. I'm not going to go into that now. Lots of problems with voting. Your individual vote really doesn't mean that much, and so people wonder, well, how could people are so ignorant, or they don't really study the issues. Well, if you're buying a house, you're going to spend a lot of time understanding that decision-making process, because you're the voter. Your one vote makes the decision. So the reason why people don't pay a lot of attention is because your individual vote really doesn't mean that much. Certainly in New York State, my vote's not going to decide anything, because Trump's not even contesting New York State. I don't think there's any obligation to vote. I think that's silly. You can, there's an obligation to vote. So you show up and what? Write in Mickey Mouse? Have you fulfilled your obligation? It's also silly. So I'm not going to endorse anybody in this podcast. All I'm going to do is make the argument that Catholics should not vote for Harris. And the only reason I'm making the argument is it was thrown in my face. Normally I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about politics and religion. But this is thrown in my face, and I'm only talking to Catholics, because my view is, if you read my books, I don't make theological or religious arguments. I make secular rational, logical arguments. Now, there is a tradition in the Catholic Church called natural law. And yes, I would consider what I write natural law type argumentation. In other words, using unaided human reason to reach political, moral judgments. And no belief in God is required. And the Catholic Church has always maintained that tradition. So, but when I'm being told as a Catholic I should vote for Harris, based on Catholic theology principles and so on, I'm going to respond to that, and I'm speaking to fellow Catholics only. Obviously, other people are welcome to listen in for whatever edification you get out of the discussion. So, with that said, I want to talk, first of all, about, so Kamala Harris's ideology. What is it? What's her actual belief system? She's not really very articulate. She's the least articulate presidential candidate I've ever seen, a major party. I can't even think of anybody, maybe George W. Bush. But George W. Bush would stumble over his lines and so on. But, at the end of the day, he could make a coherent argument for whatever dumb position he held. I wasn't a fan, don't get me wrong. So, but what is her ideology? So, the ideology of the Democratic Party, it does exist, and it's identifiable. It's not a big secret. It's just that you have to sort of open your eyes, see what's in front of your face, and identify what it is. So it's left progressivism. It's left progressivism. Those are two different things. They're not the same thing. There's so much confusion about this. If you read my books, you wouldn't be confused. So progressivism goes back to Woodrow Wilson. It's the belief that the government's going to solve all of our problems. And in Progressivism, a primer, I listed a bunch of reasons why. I'm going in the shade here. Wow, it's a very sunny day. It's a beautiful day, a little chilly. I go through reasons why Christians should not be progressives, and that applies to Catholics as well. So I have cheat notes today, which I rarely have. I haven't looked at them yet. I'm going to go through those reasons why progressives should not be. Why Catholics and Christians should not be progressive. Basically, the Democratic Party is the party of progressives, so that logically follows. There's a lot of progressivism in the Republican Party too. I'm not going to get into that today. Just talking about the fact that one of the elements of her ideology is progressivism, and that's incompatible with Christianity. The other, and I'll get into that in a second. The other element is leftism. So what is leftism? Leftism is not progressivism. It's different. It's often confused. The words are the same, but the concepts are different, and the reality behind the concept is different, of course. So leftism is this fanatical belief in equality, and furthermore, you can believe anything you want. It doesn't make it an ideology. Furthermore, they want the state to ruthlessly enforce equality. And she is a leftist. I don't think there's any question about that. It's in her rhetoric, her speeches, and so on, her equity, equality, all that crap. I don't want to slice and dice that now. So let's talk about, let's just show leftism. So first of all, if you look at the historical record of leftist regimes, they have created nothing but misery, mass murder, and chaos on the earth. So just history shows that Christians should not be leftists. But moreover, leftism denies, I think a Christian should believe that each of us are unique individuals created by God. So leftism basically wants to treat society like an ant colony. Everybody's the same, and any little divergence. No, these differences, these individual differences are wonderful and should be celebrated. So, again, I'm not going to belabor the point because I think it's obvious. I'm going to try not to use an F-bomb because it's Sunday. It's pretty obvious that leftism is not compatible with Christianity. It's widespread belief that it is. So let me go into, I'm doubling back to progressivism, a primer. My argument, It was basically written in the form of a flyer. Unfortunately, I have one of these days I'm going to get these flyers out there, but I can only do so much. I'm a one-man army. So point one, if you look at what Jesus said in the New Testament, Jesus never said anything about what the government should do. His message is what you should do. Now, I always get back, render under Caesar. So what? That's not an exception to what I'm saying. Render under Caesar. He never says what belongs to Caesar. Some people might say Caesar deserved, what he got. So Jesus in that dialogue, I believe. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a biblical scholar at all. But I am a lawyer. I know how to make an argument. And I know how to refute an argument. So he was basically just begging the question because they were trying to trap him and he didn't want to be trapped. So trying to carry out the message of the Gospels by the means of state violence is a heresy. I think that's pretty clear because although the New Testament talks about a lot of things that the individual should do morally, it doesn't say anything about what the government should do. So you're hijacking the government, which is this monopoly on violence, to fulfill what is your individual responsibility. And on the subject of immigration, we'll get into that shortly, because I think that's a huge problem with the so-called left-wing view of immigration and Catholicism. Progressivism's highest moral principle is majority rule. That means that it overrides any and all Christian moral principles. In fact, I just read a supporter of Harris say that, I follow the church's teaching on abortion, but, Thomas Aquinas said something about civil law has to be according to the consensus. So basically, what the guy's saying is he's allowing the majority rule to essentially negate his moral principles. And, I'm not going to slice and dice that author further. He's kind of not a very persuasive fellow. No man can serve two masters. The two leading Christian philosophers, Aquinas and Augustine, agreed. It's Latin. I'm having trouble reading Latin with my sunglasses on because it's ITELs. It's translated, an unjust law is no law at all. However, under progressivism, every law passed by the majority is just by definition. Government welfare is not Christian charity. Jesus never said, love your neighbor by pointing a sword at your other neighbors to get their money. And, there's this whole myth that the Democratic Party is following Christian principles. It is absolutely not in any way, shape, or form. The motivation of many to support welfare is anything but Christian, including buying off the poor so they don't revolt against a corrupt system of corporatism, and making sure that someone else deals with the poor and their problems because we don't want to be bothered with them. Let's face it. A lot of people don't want to be bothered. They'd rather have some bureaucrat do it. That's not Christian. You can be for that if you want. That's not Christian. Don't say it's Christianity. It's not. It's just you copping out on dealing with a difficult problem. Progressive state of America is fundamentally hostile to Christianity on a wide range of issues: welfare, schools, war, torture. And finally, government schools were designed to be anti-Christian. They have worked very well in that regard. How often do we hear, somebody goes into high school, devout Christian or Catholic, and comes out, an atheist? So based on her ideology alone, that's disqualifying. There's nothing in her ideology, in other words, her basic worldview, that's philo-Christian or friendly to Christian. And we're not talking about her theological beliefs at all. That's not the argument. We're talking about whether her policy positions are favorable to a Christian or Catholic outlook. And they are not. Her ideology is not. Let's talk about specific issues. And you think I'm going to lead with one issue, but I'm not. I'm going to lead with war. Christians, Catholics developed just war theory. War is bad and can only be fought under certain circumstances. And there are rules to war. The whole concept of war crimes and so on. That was developed by medieval Catholic and Christian philosophers and eventually was codified into international law. So specifically, she has supported this human meat grinder in the Ukraine. And Trump, I fault Trump for not, and I'm not endorsing anybody, by the way, in this podcast. I fault Trump for not pointing out the fact that she has put no cap on how long American billions of dollars are going to go to a war, which is killing like 1 million Ukrainians and a couple 100,000 Russians, both sides being conscripts, by the way. So you could say, well, they deserve it. Well, they're conscripts. They don't deserve it. So the destruction of Ukraine, which she has supported based on this, phony baloney business that the war started in 2022. The war started in 2014 when her hero, Obama, started a coup in Ukraine. The war has been going on for years. So I don't want to talk about other candidates, but there's been a lot of wars and chaos under this regime, and she promises to continue. And what's happened in Gaza, it's just awful, and the United States is paying for that, and she's responsible for that, and she's given some double talk about what she thinks because she needs to cater to both sides to win the election. This is another reason that she can't be honest, and I think honesty should be a quality that Catholic should look for in a politician. Abortion, I'm not really going to say a lot about this, except that she favors no limits on abortion at all, and I think, like what Elon Musk said, that an abortion past the point of viability is certainly a murder, whether you think it is before that point or not. And partial birth abortion is really a form of infanticide. She's not going to put any limits on that at all. And moreover, she was explicitly asked whether religious organizations would be given an exemption from mandates to provide this so-called health care for the non-disease of being pregnant. And she said no. So as I understand her point, she would force Catholic and Christian hospitals and doctors to perform abortions. That's abominable. Gender surgery, on kids, that's certainly not something that a Catholic should support. Talk about free speech. She's very hostile to free speech. The right to religious liberty is in the First Amendment. So she's not, left progressives are not in favor of individual rights. And the right to exercise your religion is an individual right. So there's no reason that sometime in the future she would just crack down on religious liberty. There's no assurance at all. She's not a libertarian. She doesn't understand libertarian history. She doesn't know who the pre-founding fathers were. She doesn't seem to know much of anything. It's just amazing. I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but the fact that this woman is tied for president like 2 days before the election, I'm ashamed to be an American, really. Even if Trump wins narrowly, it's like, really? What the hell are half of the country thinking? Again, I'm not endorsing anybody. There's no obligation to vote. I'm just saying a Catholic should not, if you're trying to follow Catholic principles, should not vote for Harris. You can stay home. You can go. You can write in Mickey Mouse. You can write in Trump or a minor party candidate. But Catholics should. And again, I'm rebutting an argument that was thrown in my face. I normally don't talk about religion and politics. Let me make another constitutional point. A lot of people misunderstand. There's a thing in the Constitution, the religious test for public office. There should be no religious test for public office. That, the Constitution, with the exception of slavery, is only binding on the government. That clause is binding on the government. That clause is not binding on voters. You could vote for any reason you want or no reason at all. It's unregulated. It's secret. You don't have any responsibility. It's one of the critiques I would make about voting. And one of the things I said, and I know this is a digression, but is there a lazier way to improve society than going to vote? It's like, really? We're told this is some sacred thing that you have to do. It's like, what positive human value is created by the act of voting, even multiplied by 10 million other people voting? As a libertarian, I view voting as a strictly defensive, in a way to express a point of view which is not held by that many people in the United States. Let's talk about two more issues, and I'm going to end with the big issue that they claim requires three more issues. I'm going to end with the big one, which is immigration. That's the one where they claim that she's in line with church teachings. It's bullshit. So the state of the economy is such that young people aren't getting married. They can't buy houses. They're not having any kids. There's not going to be any future Catholic Church or Protestant Church if this trend continues. And how is that? To me, the proper political philosophy, if you're a Catholic, is to say that I should have the maximum liberty to live my moral choices according to my religion. I should have control over my property and my life and my liberty. And she is not for that. And we're getting into a society, and one of the reasons they feel like they have to import people from other countries is because allegedly we need more people here. Well, I don't want to get too risque on a Sunday, but hey, Americans, do you think you know how to make more people if we need them? But again, the overall economic conditions are such that it's impossible for young people to get married and live that Catholic religious lifestyle that I think is called for by our theology. One other issue. Sorry, I gotta cheat. I'm getting distracted here by all the cross country runners. I'm almost gonna. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna talk about what now. So again, there's a low rate of marriage. Young men are beginning to realize that if they get married and there's a divorce, that the courts favor females in divorce court. Now that is because of the ideology of feminism, and of course Kamala Harris is a feminist. So one of the reasons that the family is on decline in America, births are on decline in America, religiosity, which is really tied into the creation of new life, I'm not going to get into theology, is because the divorce court, family court is so biased in favor of the woman based on this progressive ideology, left progressive ideology of feminism. And she certainly supports that. And you're going to get judges who do everything they can to continue the ridiculous advantage that women have in divorce court and family court, where one of the major causes of suicide in the United States, by the way, the gun people never want to talk about this. They talk about suicide. They don't want to talk about the cause. Working class men who get divorced in their 50s and 60s and lose their house, their kids, and half of their wages. So she's all down with that. That's anti-family. It's anti-men. There's no conflict of interest between men and women. But the government creates these conflicts of interest. So let me close the last issue. Immigration. Now there's some double talk about. There's some quotes in the Bible. You have to welcome the stranger. Again, I revert back to what I said. Jesus never said anything about what the government should do. Jesus talked about what you should do. And I've talked about immigration extensively. I've written a book about immigration. Progressive Democrats do not care about immigrants. How I know this? It's the Freudian slip. Do you ever hear them talk about why immigrants come here? No. I know why immigrants come here. Because their countries are hellholes. Their countries are hellholes for a variety of identifiable reasons, one of which is the lack of economic liberty. Democrats don't support economic liberty in third world countries. They couldn't care less. They lack a right to bear arms. Kamala Harris is a gun grabber. She's a liar. She's advocated for gun control her whole life, and now she's a gun owner. She's popped up as claiming she's a gun owner. That'd be funny, Well, I don't even talk about guns because whatever I say is going to be twisted. So, the endless forever wars cause a lot of refugee problems in the third world. People don't want to leave their countries. They will leave if they're desperate. So Kamala Harris doesn't give a shit about immigrants. And the way that many of the illegals come in is horrible. Coming up through Mexico, we all know about the mistreatment of women and children. There's absolutely no concern at all. The only reason these ruthless bastards care about bringing in masses from the third world is they don't like the country. You know, the country's the people. They don't like the country. They're just replacing us with other people. And that's because they don't like the country. Because there's still about half of the country that resists this left progressive bullshit. So, and the other thing is specifically, they want Democratic states and cities are losing population because people hate living there. They're moving to different states and localities. But they bring in the immigrants and then they count in the census so they don't lose their congressional seats and their presidential electors, which could be relevant on Tuesday. And then, of course, the other reason is they expect these people have not been able to. I'm going to close in about 2 minutes. These people, look, I wasn't a huge fan of Ronald Reagan. I rank him. I did a rank of presidents the other day. I thought Reagan was one of the better presidents of the last 50 years. But he did win 49. Sorry, he did win 49 states in 1984. Beat Mondale. Nixon won 49 states in 1972. He beat McGovern. My friend George McGovern, I met him once. He came to one of my speeches. So instead of saying we need, to change our policies because the American people hate our party, no, they just decided through massive legal and illegal immigration to elect a new electorate. So Kamala Harris's views on immigration are not consistent with Catholic theology. And in fact, I pointed out in one of my books, these signs that say hate has no home here. I often thought it'd be mischievous to put up a sign on the public right-of-way saying, neither do any refugees have any home there. It's all virtue signaling. If you want to open your home to refugees and poor people from the third world, I give you all the credit in the world for acting in accordance with your theological beliefs. But voting to support the re-engineering of the country, I mean, the U.S. and it's not consistent. The Catholic Church says that there's room for laws regulating citizenry, whether I think so or not. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Catholic Church things. This notion they're going to re-engineer the population of one country for nefarious reasons, and that's consistent with Catholic theology or Christian theology, BS. I won't swear on the Sunday, BS. So on that note, I think I have totally destroyed the argument for why the alleged argument that Catholics should support Kamala Harris. They should not. Vote for whoever you want. Don't vote. I don't care. But that is a bad argument, and I have destroyed that argument today, folks. Have a great day.